So, hello everyone. Hi everyone. Welcome to Elisa's creative journey. Life as a creative person and who has many ideas. And today I want to talk about ADHD. So I had a dinner today with my sister's friend, and before I was even asked, do you have ADHD? Which I don't tell people, and I've never been diagnosed or anything. I probably do. And honestly, frankly, I don't care what the label of the diagnosis I have. I know my strengths and my weaknesses. I think that's a really important part because I hear a lot of these conversations of people talking about ADHD these days. I do wonder, is it really ADHD, or is it just you haven't found what you're passionate about, or is it you're getting bored easily, or you can't focus because you're not interested in that topic? Yes, ADHD does reflect into your brain development and which area of your brain you're most active on. If I understand it correctly, I remember reading this book called Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, which is one of the most inspiring books I've read. It talks about how people with ADHD, their frontal cortex is not as active as people who don't have ADHD, but
this is the brain of an ADHD person.
I also do wonder, there's so many people on their phone these days. Everything's fast-paced. We're constantly fed with short-form video content. We're constantly fed with so many information, and there's so many options of things we can do these days. Is it really ADHD, or you're just confused because there's so many information and you're overwhelmed? Also, you haven't found what you want to do, and maybe your weakness is time management, but we all have. Maybe your weakness is organizing, but a lot of people, you don't teach a kid to suddenly be organized, especially a kid who's creative and have ideas. Not everyone has the same strengths that standard society has. And anyways, so going back to dinner with my sister's friend, and she asked me, how do you cope with ADHD out of nowhere?
What makes you think I have ADHD?
Quite frankly, I was shocked. First of all, we didn't even talk about ADHD at all. And she was very sweet. I'm not putting any hate on her. I loved how open she was, and she wanted to talk about different things. It seems that she was also wanting some advice because she said that she thinks she has ADHD. I couldn't really tell. Apparently she gets bored with things easily, but she asked me out of nowhere. First of all, it's funny because it was out of nowhere, and I guess it's very obvious that I'm all over the place and I'm very hyper and and it's okay. Apparently my sister talked about it before, so I didn't really care. But I thought this is a good opportunity to reflect and talk about this. How do I cope with ADHD? That question made me think about that because I never really thought about it because I don't really think about ADHD in myself. I do know that unorganized is definitely some of my weaknesses. Needing to improve some of my weaknesses is something I am facing every day, whether it's work or with myself. Sorry, I guess it's pretty obvious I do have ADHD. Like, even me trying to organize this thought and me talking about this, I am going back and forth and all these different things. I personally have this weird relationship with ADHD. Like, I don't like the word ADHD. And I had a therapist. I have a family therapist. He was actually a friend of my dad, and he asked me once, this therapist asked me out of nowhere, do you want to be diagnosed for ADHD? And I said, okay, what's the benefit for it? And my sister's friend also asked the same questions. Have you been diagnosed? I'm like, no, I've never been. And I honestly, frankly, don't care. And this is the same thing I said to the therapist too. Like, I don't care. Because, okay, what am I going to do? Like, I'm going to take Adderall and I'm going to take these ADHD medicine. Maybe that'll help me. But these are weaknesses I have that I have to live with, and I don't want to be dependent on a drug. And maybe I should try it out. I would love to give an update after I try something like that out. My partner, he's also ADHD too. I think that's what he said. He said that whenever he takes ADHD medicine, like, it makes his heart hurt. I think everyone has different experiences with them. But when my therapist asked this, I remember saying to him, I think everyone has different weaknesses and strengths. And, society likes to label some different things, maybe because they wanted to give out some drugs and make some sales. Or maybe it is a real condition, but just because I'm bad at time management, just because I'm bad at certain things, I don't like the fact people are using ADHD as a reason to say, okay, I'm bad at time management because of my ADHD. Maybe that can help you relieve from that problem, but I feel like just labeling it and saying that it's ADHD won't necessarily help you solve that ADHD. You know what I mean? It's like, imagine saying, okay, you have cancer. Then yes, there's like surgery and there's these things you can do, but just because you're ADHD or not, like, you still have a problem with time management. You have to work on how to have better scheduling system, how to have better deadlines, how to work with better deadlines, how to work with your boss, your manager, or your work, or your clients. You have to have different tactics anyway. So to me, this is my personal experience. I don't want to speak on behalf of anyone, and I don't want to shame anyone who is taking it Adderall. I think, if it's working for you, great. But personally, I didn't like to be, I don't want to feel like, I don't want to know something that is irrelevant to me solving that problem. Even if I have ADHD or dyslexia or anything it is, in the end, my problem is I need to have better time management. So I'll work on that. I don't want to be told by some doctor saying that I'm wrong with X, Y, and Z, if in the end, I have to just improve with my time management and organization and other things. So I guess that's answer number 1. Have you been ever diagnosed, or how do you cope with ADHD? Like, that's my perspective on ADHD. Instead of labeling it as ADHD, I like to label the actual issue. And to me, the actual issue with my ADHD, and honestly, I'm pretty hyper focused as well. But I know that with things that I'm bad with time management. Definitely, like, I do have a tendency of being late on things. But also I know that if there's a deadline, I can get it done. I will get it done, and I'll do my best to get it done. And I also hyper focus. Like, I will not maybe sleep the day before, the 2 days before, but that's when I get a lot of creativity. That's when I get to do a lot of stuff done. And I do enjoy that adrenaline, or that feeling of feeling zoned out, to be able to get things done. But I don't, the fact that we have to label and put all these extra label that divert you from finding out the real issue. To summarize, I don't want to know the labels. I just want to know the real issue, and I want to solve that real issue, and I want to focus on the tactics to solve that real issue. Even if my therapist says, oh, why don't you get diagnosed? Does that give me disability benefits? Maybe then I'll do it, but I don't care what you think, and I don't want to know, and I don't want to blame it on my ADHD for these weaknesses. I would rather have an efficient solution to solving them and think about that, instead of saying, oh, because I'm this, therefore I have these weaknesses. Like, every human being have their weaknesses and strengths, and just because society sees these weaknesses as something that is, I don't know, ADHD, I do want to note that when I read Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, it did talk about exercising a lot. It does help with your ADHD. Also, it talked about eating certain meals. I'll share here. It does help with ADHD. So I feel like those are practical things that I want to hear. Like, I want to hear, okay, like, these are things I can do, I can take, but also it's something every healthy human being should do. They should take more proteins. They should also exercise more. But I guess I have to be more conscious about this. So I do want to know about that, but I don't want to go to a doctor just for them to give me Adderall. For me, I don't want to do that. And again, I'm not shaming anyone who does take Adderall. Second answer I gave to my sister's friend when she asked me, how do you deal with ADHD? I said, well, first of all, knowing your weaknesses and strengths, but I also work really hard to be in a place where I can make a living with my strengths. Like, I've worked my ass off to be able to make a living and work doing something I love. And it doesn't mean you have to create a business, but I think the answer I was trying to give was that do what you love. Obviously, you're a human. If you don't do what you love, you're going to get bored. You're going to complain about it. You're not going to be happy. The second answer is that if you can know your weakness, you'll know your strengths too. So now that you know your weakness and you know your strengths, put yourself to be in a place where you can embrace your strength. Be in a workplace that you can focus on growing your strengths. Don't be in a place where you don't doing what you're doing every day. Don't go to a school that you don't doing what you're learning every day. I was in engineering. I hated it. And I also knew that this is not something I would be happy, even if I get some fancy tech job, because everyone in Waterloo gets that, right? Everyone in my school is getting that. I don't care. I just want to be happy doing things that I enjoy. And I also knew that if I can be good with what I'm doing, and if I can be good with my strengths enough to be able to make money or have a job or do work, then if I can put myself in that situation and be in that field, I knew I can thrive. So I think it's so important to say no to things, even if your parents or your colleagues or whoever it is that's telling you to do certain careers. I think it's so important to know your strength and stick with it. To be truth to yourself. Say that if you don't want to do these things, be honest and do what you love, because if you do what you love, and even if it might not make you money, if you stick with it and if you can be the best at that field, you will figure out a way to make money. I think a lot of people think that you can only do that when your life is funded by parents. It's a lot easier to do so, but I've came from a place where I got kicked out financially and I had to figure that out, and I did stick with what I wanted to do, and my parents were really against it, and I figured it out even though I was really broke the first year. And it's really rewarding. The third thing I want to say is I articulate my weaknesses to my team and I get help. And I've worked hard to be in a place where I can hire people to help me with my weaknesses, but also I'm constantly working on this and I'm constantly facing things that I'm not good at. And organization is something I do struggle. And I know that my clients also know this too. And I do try to improve that. I do try to be more aware of that so I can do better. And I do think that my clients know as well, but I love putting deadlines in things that I'm doing.
The best ADHD medicine, some people might say Adderall, some people might say magic mushroom, but I think the best ADHD medicine is deadlines. If you were someone who always studied the day before, who did your homework the day before, put deadlines to all the tasks that you're doing. Put deadlines with the things that you want to accomplish. Put deadlines to the small tasks that you're doing, and also involve other people to the deadline so there's peer pressure and you have to get it done. And I think this is the part that I get frustrated with the word ADHD. When I think of ADHD, I think of people who can't get things done, who's all over the place. Maybe I am all over the place, but I do get things done. And hey, there's people, who are on time, who have a functioning brain, who is very smart, but maybe they have a hard time getting things done. It's not really because of ADHD. It might be because they're lazy. It might be because they aren't motivated. It might be because they don't know their life purpose. That's why I feel this weird relationship with ADHD. Like, is it really ADHD or is it just all these other reasons? The thing about deadline is not just about ADHD. I feel like it can be applied to anything in life, because a lot of us, we learn in society, we learn to do what other people say, to do what your teachers say, to do what your parents say. And we have this pressure to meeting deadlines, meeting homework, meeting exams, meeting whatever, you've been requested to by other people. But then the hardest part is doing what you want to do and you want to accomplish. And I think the part that's most difficult is your own personal life and creating deadlines to your own goals, creating deadlines to your own projects or work, creating deadlines to make your life to be what it wants to be. In the end, life is about that. Like, it's almost like a video game where you're playing and focusing on yourself, to bettering yourself, to create the life you want. In order to make that happen, a lot of people will label you in different ways. And in order to understand yourself, a lot of people will try to label to understand themselves. But in the end, what's most important is not the label, but it is the action and the mindset. And I think setting deadline is one of the most important thing, not just for people who have ADHD, but anyone, especially because we learn to live with deadlines that's set by other people, and we don't learn how to set deadlines with ourselves. And that's why I say free ADHD medicine, but maybe the better thing to say is free want to make my life better medicine is setting deadline. It's like, whoever you are, if you're not setting deadlines to your goal, when are you going to do it?
Articulating deadlines. I think articulating deadlines is so important, especially if you have a hard time getting things done without a deadline. I articulate deadlines to my client and I try to stick to it. And I try to have other people be accountable of me by having meetings. I know if there's a meeting, I get things done. I tell them this is going to be a meeting, and even if it's the day before, I'll get it done. So I think it's really important to have good deadlines and know what you need to do. Yeah, so I think having deadline is really important if you do have ADHD, or if you feel you're not good with time, but you know that whenever you have that test in a week, or if you're that person who has a deadline and you do everything before the deadline, the day before, you know that deadline works for you and you've experienced hyper-focusedness. You've experienced being really focused. I think the biggest thing with ADHD is that don't feel bad about yourself. Don't ever feel less because you have this word or label called ADHD. Don't ever feel that way, because, hey, my clients pay me for my creativity. My clients pay me for my creative strategy. My clients pay me for, I am valued in society. And I know that because I focused on my strength. I ignored my therapist saying that, hey, you have these weaknesses and you should go to a doctor and get diagnosed. I you to that. I didn't say fuck you to that, but I did ignore people making me feel bad about my weaknesses and how I can create strategy to make it better. And I also focused on my strength and making money and having my strength be a use in society so people can appreciate that. And I think it's so important for you to not ever feel bad. There's times where I forget my keys or I can't find my phone, and it's okay. Get an air tag. Don't ever feel like you're less because you're late. Don't ever feel like you won't ever be able to function in society or make money or fund your living because of your ADHD. Because if you have ADHD, you have some gifts, some part that you're very strong in. I remember when my dad thought I had dyslexia, and maybe I do, he told me, hey, people with dyslexia actually have a lot of strengths, and some famous entrepreneurs or people you admire have dyslexia and they have wonderful creativity. And I was focused on that. And my mom was always like, no, you don't have dyslexia or ADHD. I don't know what I have, but I do know my weaknesses. I do know I sometimes remember numbers wrong and I say one thing and then other thing comes out. And I know what my weakness is, but I don't focus on that every day. I focus on how I can solve it and I focus on my strength. And if you ever have someone who makes you feel bad because of your ADHD, that's how you're interpreting it. But know that you have wonderful strength and know that you have great ideas. And know that if you can focus on that idea and work on those strengths that you have, you're going to create something really, really amazing. And you are good at something. If you're bad at something, you are good at something.
That was a good quote. That was tweetable. If you're bad at something, you are good at something. And focus on the good part and try to find strategies to work around the bad part. But just don't call yourself ADHD and remind yourself that you have all these bad things all the time. Like, there should be a positive word for ADHD. I don't know, like creative or hyperfocus or like you have great imagination. But instead of calling yourself ADHD, and I feel like a lot of people use it as a cool word these days, like, oh my god, I'm so ADHD. Just don't focus on the ADHD part. Focus on your strengths.
Focus on what you're good at. And so to go back to answer your question, how do you cope with ADHD? I just work really hard to be able to do what I'm good at every day. And I work really hard to reflect on my weaknesses and get help. And when I say get help, it doesn't mean I go to a doctor and get labeled as ADHD. It means I think of how can I be more organized. I'll use calendars. I'll use organization tools. I might use timers. I'll communicate this with other people. I also have worked on my weaknesses. I've been very intentional. And if you can put your mind to something, you will be able to accomplish it. If you put a mind on, wanting to make sure you're on time, you will get better at it, even if sometimes you fail. But you also have to forgive yourself to say that, you know what, this is not the end of the world. And there's people with actual, disadvantage that they can't perform some things. But if it's weaknesses, it doesn't mean you can't do it. It's not like you don't have a leg to walk. It's just weaknesses. It doesn't mean you're not capable of doing it. It's just weaknesses. It just means you're going to take a little bit more time. You're going to take a little bit more effort, but you can do it. Don't let anyone say you can't do something. And don't let anyone take your strengths away and make you feel bad. And don't ever put yourself into a place where you're only doing things that you're not good at. Make sure you're embracing your strengths because those are a gift from God, I think. And do what you love so you're not bored at it. Do what you love so you're so focused on it. And I honestly think my strength is hyper-focusedness. If you ask anyone who's close to me, my partner, my friends who've lived with me, they'll see how much work I'm doing every day as well, how much I'm thinking about work all the time. I am very hyper-focused that way. Also, another biggest thing, I think partner is very understanding. He has always been there for me, even if I might, lose a lot of things. Like, he doesn't get mad at me for it. He laughs and tries to help me. And obviously he gets, frustrated sometimes, but he never makes me feel bad. And he's very understanding and supportive. I think it's really important you have a partner or someone that understands and make you feel like you want to work on it. Is it that obvious that I have ADHD?
Yeah, sometimes you're all over the fucking place.
But why are you so kind and understanding?
Because I have experience handling retards.
What makes you think that I'm a retard? Okay, this is my opinion to people out there. If you're in a relationship and they make you feel bad about your weaknesses and they get extremely frustrated or extremely mad that you're like late to something or you lose something, like, it's understandable that people might feel frustrated, but if they're yelling at you and if they're saying mean things to you and if they're making you feel extremely insecure, I think you should not be in that relationship and you should dump that person. What do you think, sir?
No, they're doing their job. You need to keep these bitches in line.
No! Do something.
You learn
you're
from
gonna-
mistakes if you don't get negative reinforcement.
Okay, but you get negative reinforcement, but like if someone's like yelling at you and like being extremely toxic, I don't think you should be in that relationship.
Yeah, that's a little too far.
That's a little too far. Like you teach me, but you don't ever get mad at me like that.
Sometimes I do.